I was 24 when I asked to leave my marriage. My husband was 28. We had been married 6 years inside the Decatur West congregation, and I had never once spent a single night anywhere but under a brother's roof. In November of 2024, 3 men sat across a folding table from me in the back room of a kingdom hall my grandfather helped build, and they decided what I would be allowed to keep. Not my husband, my mother, my father, my brother. The only world I had ever been given. People think a woman just walks out of the truth. She does not walk. She is processed. There is a manual for it, a typed questionnaire, a judicial committee, an announcement read aloud from the platform on a Thursday night. Before I tell you what those elders said to a wife who tried to leave, I need you to understand the house I'm about to take you into. I will get to that back room. I promise you that. So stay in the room with me. Not because an algorithm wants your minute, but because somewhere tonight there is a young black sister in a hall like mine who has already started to wonder, and she needs to know she is not the first. If you ever sat across from 3 brothers in a back room, tell me in the comments which room you remember. Add your voice so the next one hears it before it is too late. Let me take you back to the morning of October 14th, 2018. I was 18 years old, and my mother came into the bedroom where I had slept my whole girlhood and set a book down on the dresser beside me. The Secret of Family Happiness. The pink hardcover, the 1996 edition, the one almost every sister in the Decatur West congregation kept on a shelf somewhere. She had pressed a yellow post-it onto Chapter 5. Chapter 5 is the chapter on headship. She smoothed the front of my dress, and she told me that a wife who respects theocratic order is never truly alone. Then we drove to a hall off Memorial Drive, and I married Trey Coleman in front of 200 people, and I did everything I was told. I want you to understand that I was not unhappy. That is the part nobody believes. When you are raised in the truth, raised in a Black Kingdom Hall your own grandfather helped pour the foundation for in 1987, you do not experience obedience as a cage. You experience it as love. You experience it as belonging. Every Sunday I sat in the same metal folding chair, on a brown carpet worn pale down the center aisle, and I felt held. The Watchtower study, the service meeting, the field ministry on Saturday mornings, that was the shape of a good life, and I wanted to be good more than I wanted anything in the world. Trey was a good provider. I need to say that plainly because this is not the story you think it is. He never once raised his voice in 6 years. He never lifted a hand to me. He was an insurance adjuster at a little Black-owned firm in southwest Atlanta, appointed a ministerial servant at 25, and the brothers were already preparing him for elder. He loved me the only way the truth had ever taught a young brother to love a wife, through provision, through correction, through order, through headship. The cruelty in my marriage never had a fist, it had a manual. Every Sunday after the meeting, my mother-in-law took me aside. Sister Coleman, Trey's mother, a soft-spoken woman with gentle hands, and she called it shepherding. We would sit at the back of the hall, near the literature counter, and she would ask me, kindly, how my submission was coming along. Whether I was being a help to my husband's spiritual headship. Whether I had kept up with my personal study that week. I counted them once, later, all those after-meeting talks. More than 300 of them across 6 years, and I sat through every single one and thanked her at the end. I lost 2 pregnancies in that marriage, one in 2020 and one in 2022, and both times the comfort I was offered came folded inside a question about whether something in my spirituality had displeased Jehovah. I want you to sit with that. I lost children, and I was asked to examine my obedience. My grandfather had been an elder at Decatur West for 32 years. Reverend Joseph Bennett, before the truth, a Baptist preacher across South Atlanta in the early 60s, who walked out of his own church mid-sermon in 1968 and gave his life to the witnesses because, he said, it was the only church in America that did not have a Negro section and a white section. He died when I was 9. I grew up on the story of his faith the way other children grow up on fairy tales. So when I tell you I believed, understand that I came by it honestly. 3 generations honestly. The pink book stayed on my shelf that whole marriage, the Post-it still on chapter 5, and I read that chapter so many times the spine fell open to it on its own. I thought it was a manual for happiness. I did not yet understand it was a manual for management. To understand what they did to me when I tried to leave, you have to understand the machine I am describing, because it is not a feeling and it is not a handful of bad men. It is a structure, and it is written down. There is a book the elders have. The Secret of Family Happiness sits on the sisters' shelves, but the book the brothers keep is called Shepherd the Flock of God. Trey had his own copy, a personal copy, because a man being prepared for elder is permitted to read it. I was not. The instructions for how a wife's life would be handled, the questions they were allowed to ask, the procedures for a judicial committee, all of it lived in a book I was governed by and forbidden to open. That is the cleanest way I know to describe this entire religion. You live your whole life under rules you are not permitted to read. Headship is the spine of it. The doctrine that the husband is the head of the wife as Christ is the head of the congregation. On the page it sounds like scripture. In a kitchen in Decatur, it means that a 20-year-old woman does not have a single decision that is fully her own. Not about her body, not about her money, not about whether she stays. And underneath headship sits the thing that makes headship enforceable, the thing nobody outside the truth ever fully understands: shunning. The organization calls it disfellowshipping. What it means is that everyone you have ever loved is instructed, on threat of their own standing before Jehovah, to treat you as though you have died. Your mother, your father, your brother, your best friend since you were 12 years old. And there is a rule underneath all of it that I only understood after I was already gone. The 2-witness rule. Nothing is wrong in the truth unless 2 people saw it happen. A wife can be worn down for years inside a marriage and walk into a back room with nothing a committee is required to hear, because being slowly erased leaves no second witness. The kind of cruelty that disappears a woman is always done in a room with only 2 people in it, and one of them is her. So she has no case. She only has the conduct of leaving, and the conduct of leaving is the thing they will judge. I know exactly how it works, because I did it myself. This is the part I have never said out loud. When I was 21 years old, no, I was 22, it was the year before my brother Marcus's daughter was born. A sister in our congregation left her husband and faded from the truth, and I crossed a grocery aisle to avoid her. I did not even decide to. My body did it before my mind could. I had been trained. And there is worse than that. I had an aunt, my mother's older sister Diane. Aunt Diane left the truth in 2003, divorced an elder, and was shunned by my entire family for 19 years. On the morning of my wedding, my mother instructed me not to speak her name, and I obeyed. I stood up in front of 200 people on the happiest day a sister is allowed to have, and I erased the one woman in my family who had already survived exactly what was coming for me. I helped them disappear her. I have to carry that, and here is what I will not do. I will not stand here and call these people monsters. Trey was not a monster. Trey was a young black brother who had been handed the same single hour of instruction his father was handed, and his father before him, and he did with it precisely what he had been taught. My mother is not a monster. My mother was 19 years old in 1985 when she gave her life to this, and she has been afraid every day since that loving me the wrong way would cost her the resurrection. The system does not need monsters. It only needs good, frightened, faithful people who do exactly what the book tells them to do. So now I will take you into the back room. I promised you I would. In the fall of 2024, I told Trey I wanted a divorce. I had no scriptural grounds. In the truth, there is exactly one ground for a divorce that frees you to remarry: adultery. And Trey had not committed it. He had done nothing the manual recognized as wrong. He had simply been my head for 6 years in a marriage that was quietly erasing me, and the religion has no category for that. There is no questionnaire for a wife who is disappearing. So when a woman tries to leave a marriage that is not violent and not adulterous, the elders do not let her go. First, they shepherd her. That is the word for what they do to a wife who tries to leave: shepherding. Brothers come to your home. They sit in your living room with their Bibles, and they ask you to consider the dishonor you would bring on Jehovah's name. They remind you that your marriage vow was made to God, not to a man. They ask whether you have prayed enough, submitted enough, waited on Jehovah enough. They tell you to stay, and to keep staying, and to call your staying obedience. For weeks they came, and when I would not return, when I kept saying the one word a sister is never supposed to say, which is no, the shepherding became something else. It became a judicial committee. 3 men. The back room of the Decatur West Hall. The one room with a single table. In the building my grandfather Joseph helped raise in 1987. Brother Davis, 67 years old, presiding. Brother Whitfield, 51, taking the notes. And the third man at that table was Brother Marcus Coleman, Trey's father. He should have removed himself. A man does not sit in judgment of the woman divorcing his own son. He did not remove himself, and no one made him. They had the typed questionnaire from the manual laid out in front of them, and they asked me their questions, and early in November of 2024, they disfellowshipped me. Not for adultery, not for any sin you would recognize as a sin, for the conduct of leaving, for refusing to be shepherded back into my place. And here is what disfellowshipping is, the part the title promised you, the answer to what they do. It is not being put out of a building. It is the severing of your entire world in a single Thursday night announcement read from the platform. The next morning, my mother did not call. My father did not call. My brother Marcus shunned me inside that same week, because the body will not appoint a man to elder who cannot enforce discipline in his own household, and I was the discipline. I had no money of my own. I had been a wife. I had no family who would take my call. I had no friends out in the world, because we were taught that the world belonged to Satan, and you do not build a life inside it. I was 24 years old, and I had nowhere to go. That is not a figure of speech. I mean that I sat in a car in a parking lot off Memorial Drive and could not think of a single door anywhere on this earth that would open for me. It took me a year to find the word for what those 6 years had been, and I did not find it in a Kingdom Hall. I found it in a library book, and then in a quiet doctor's office. The word was coercive control. Not a fist, not a bruise, a slow, total, scriptural management of a person until she can no longer locate her own will. And Brother Davis, I want to tell you something about Brother Davis. He was not a monster either. My mother told me later that he wept when he made the call to her on a Sunday night. He had presided over 20 of those committees in his life, and he believed every one of them was an act of love. That is the horror of it. He cried, and then he did it anyway, because the book told him to. It has been about 18 months now. I have a 1-bedroom apartment in central Decatur, up a flight of stairs in an old brick building, close enough to the MARTA that I can hear it. I built a bookshelf out of pine boards and cinder blocks because I could not yet afford a real one, and there are still 46 boxes from the marital home sitting in a storage unit I pay for every month. I am finishing an associate's degree at Georgia State Perimeter at 26 in a room full of teenagers. This is what nobody tells you about leaving. You do not get your years back. You start over from the place where you stopped. But I am not alone, and that is because of the woman they tried to erase. Every other Saturday, Aunt Diane drives over from Eastlake. She is 62 now, a hospital administrator, 19 years shunned and rebuilt on the far side of it. She brings a sweet potato pie from a bakery on Memorial Drive, and because I still do not own a kitchen table, we sit on the floor of my front room and eat it right off our laps. She never asks me about Trey. She lets me say whatever I came to say. She is the only blood relative who will take my call, and she is the proof I hold on to, because 20 years ago she was me, a black wife who left an elder, who was shunned, who had nowhere to go, and who is now the steadiest woman I know. She sent me one sentence back in 2022, when I was still in. When you are ready, I am here. I was not ready for 2 more years. She waited. Trey is already remarried, by the way, March of this year, to a 19-year-old sister from a neighboring congregation. I saw the 2 of them once, at a distance, at the Decatur Farmers Market, and I did not feel rage. I felt grief for her, because I know exactly what hour she is about to be handed. My little sister Hannah is 21, and she was baptized 2 years ago, and the elders have told her that I am a spiritual danger. She does not call me either. I write this for her, in case the day comes when she is ready, the way I was not, the way Diane was, the way it goes. The pink book is still here, The Secret of Family Happiness, the post-it still stuck to chapter 5, sitting on the second shelf of the bookshelf I built last winter. I keep it where I can see it, not because I believe a word of it anymore, but because I want to remember that a manual for managing a woman can be handed to her by a mother who loves her on a morning full of hope, with a yellow post-it and a smoothed dress. The love was real. The book was a cage. Both of those things are true, and I had to learn to hold them in the same hand. A woman wrote to me a while back and said the elders only ever wanted to help. I have thought about her a great deal. I believe she is right. I believe they did want to help. That has never once been the question. So let me say this to you, whoever you are. If you grew up in a black Kingdom Hall in Atlanta, or in a hall in any city anywhere, on a brown carpet worn pale down the middle, if you ever sat across a folding table from 3 brothers in a back room and were asked to account for your own disappearance, if you have ever asked to leave and been told that your leaving was the sin, if you are sitting somewhere right now with no money and no family and the terrible arithmetic of nowhere to go running behind your eyes, I see you. I was you. And I need you to hear the one thing it took me 26 years and everything I had to learn. The hall does not own you. I am the proof.